Good day to you. I hope that this finds you doing well. We sure appreciate you tuning into our Bible lesson. We're calling it the 10-minute Bible lesson. So if you've been watching, we just want to tell you thank you for doing it. And if you can think of it, just hit the like. And if you could also share it, it would be nice too. We'd like to get some more people tuning into this 10-minute Bible study. Now we've been doing a series on some statements that Jesus made about himself in the Gospel of John. And these statements are all around these two words where he said, I am. And in fact, there are 7 different places in John's Gospel where Jesus said, I am. In fact, today will be number 7. It'll be the last one in this series. But why don't we go ahead and look at that verse? We'll read it and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So it's found in John chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. And Jesus says this, I am, he says, the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. So the whole point is about illustration that Jesus talks about is about bearing fruit. And I want you to notice something, because it kind of caught my attention in this, where Jesus said, I am the true vine. And I kind of scratched my head a little bit about that and just kind of wondering, I'm not saying that I know for sure what Jesus meant when he said he was the true vine, but I thought that it may have something to do with this, that he's the one from whom all vines come from. I don't know if that makes sense or not. He's the one from whom all vines come from, and not just vines that produce grapes, but all kinds of trees and bushes and things of that nature and vines that bear fruit because he created them all. So he says he is the true vine, and he says that his Father, that God the Father, is the vine dresser. Now Jesus did this. He used things that were known to people. That is to say, I'm not real good at that, but I think I'd love to be able to do that, to use things in 2021, things that are really familiar with people, use those to be able to explain what, spiritual truths are. But Jesus did it, and he was absolutely the master of it. In fact, you may recall some of the things that he did. He would say, he would talk about the seed sower. And then, he talked about the sheep and the shepherd. And here in this verse, he's talking about a vine that grows grapes. And so what he was doing was he was taking things that were real familiar to the people, and they were really well known to the people, and he used that to explain spiritual truths that were not known to them. And he did that in a way so that they might be able to understand that. So if you look in the Bible, you can see that vines and vineyards, they were certainly known to the people of Israel. I mean, they understood that. Now, we understand it too, but maybe not quite as familiar as they were, because they were involved. It was involved in part of their life. So it was something that was really familiar. So they were also used in the Old Testament quite a bit. In fact, it was used in the Old Testament to do the same thing, to be able to convey a truth. And there's one place in the Old Testament where there's a story about God planting a vineyard. In fact, it says in this passage that God planted a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. Now, it actually says this is a song, and you can read about this in Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 7, where it's kind of a song. And the song, I'm not going to try to sing the song because I have no idea how it went, but the song was about God planting a vineyard on a fruitful hill. And he did all of the necessary preparations that needed to be made. He cleared out all of the brush, all of the stones, all the rubble, built a tower, built a wine press, and then he picked the choicest vine, and he did all of that and planted that in hopes to be able to get good grapes. But instead of good grapes, the song says that wild grapes came up, and or wild grapes came forth. So I thought it was interesting that it was the song was about producing good fruit, and it was actually a song about God's people. That is to say, the children of Israel and what God wanted. He wanted, and he did everything he could in order that good fruit might come forth, that good grapes, really good grapes, would come forth. In fact, what happened was wild grapes come forth. So, in a way, you might say it was really a sad song, but obviously, vineyards are supposed to be able to produce good fruit. And if you'll notice in our passage that we read, Jesus identifies himself as the true vine. And so it's true, or he's true, because the vine not only produces, but it produces the very best vintage. I don't know if you can recall the story, and I believe it's in chapter 2 of the Gospel of John, where Jesus was invited to a wedding, and they ran out of wine. And his mother came in kind of wanting to know. And so you probably know the story. He told the servants to fill the water pots with water. And by the time the water pots came, he had turned the water into wine. But what I was wanting to mention about this is that the host of the feast, he had something really special to say. He says, listen, he says, most people, when they serve their wine, the best wine, they serve it at the beginning and serve the bad wine at the end. But he said to the bridegroom, you have waited and served the very best until the last. And so you might ask this question, why was this wine the best? The reason it was the best is because Jesus made it. See, he's the true vine. And so he not only produces, but what he produces is the very best. Now, our illustration today in the passage that we read teaches us that we're supposed to produce good fruit and not wild fruit. And hopefully what we could do is think about this verse and kind of contemplate our own lives. That is to say, think about our own lives, because the purpose of our life, I believe, is to bear good fruit. In fact, Jesus says in this passage in John chapter 15, when he's talking about all of this, he said that that's how we glorify God, by producing fruit. Now, fruit being produced in our lives certainly are not grapes, but they're things that benefit mankind. And so that's our purpose. Some people think that their purpose in life is to be happy or to find happiness. But happiness is kind of, sometimes it's like sand that we grip in our hands. It sifts through our fingers. And so you can't, it's kind of out. You cannot obtain happiness by making it your life goal to seek happiness. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is here to bear fruit. And when we fulfill our purpose, then that's when happiness comes to us. So I wanted to mention that, and also I wanted to mention this, that we sometimes think that we're going to be here a really long time. In fact, sometimes when we're young, we think that life will never end. And it'll always be here. But the reality of it is that life goes by really fast. And we're only here a short time. So Jesus mentions about him being the vine in John 15 two times. The first time he mentions it is in John 15 verses 1 and 2, but then he mentions it again in verse 5. And in verse 5, he talks more about the branches. Now, in verses 1 and 2, he mentioned the Father as being the vine dresser. But in verse 5, he talks about the branches and the purpose for the branches. Why don't we read that in John chapter 15, verse 5? He simply says this, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. Now, in this verse, it gives us the key to bearing fruit. And maybe you saw that when you read that verse. But the key is this, that we are the branches, and it's imperative for us as the branches to be attached to the vine. Now that may be a no-brainer to you. You may just say, well, yeah, that's obvious. But it's absolutely important that we as branches be attached and abiding in the vine. And if we're able to do that, then we'll be able to bear fruit. Let's just say something really, really obvious. It's impossible for branches to bear fruit unless they abide in the vine. So I think you probably already know that. So we need to be attached, and it's from the vine. The reason why is because from the vine that the branches are attached to, hey, that's where all of the stuff flows from. It flows from that vine. The life flows from that vine. The nutrients and everything that has to do with producing life and fruit flows from the vine into the branches. So we are attached. How do I get connected to him? Well, I mean, some people would think, well, man, maybe if I go to church really regular and really faithful, hey, that's important. But no, that's not really it. Or maybe if I read the Bible a lot, that's important. That's really good. Maybe that's how I'll be connected to him. No, how we're connected to him is by faith. That's how we are joined and make the connection with God is by faith. We commit our life to him and trust him as our Savior. That's how we get connected. That's how the branch stays into the vine. It's simply by faith. And in doing that, we're going to be receiving the life that flows from the vine into us. That would be the branches. We appreciate you listening to us, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. Hope it makes sense to you. Just another one, the last one, where Jesus says, I am. This time he says, I am the true vine, and we are the branches. Hey, let's ask God to help us to be fruitful.